I'm James T. Prout, author of The Last Days Timeline. This is a presentation, it's an update presentation across a few different topics. You and I have been involved with COVID-19 and coronavirus now for 1 full year. This is being recorded in early April 2021, just before the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference coming up in just a week. General Conference has just taken place, and we are now looking at the events around the timeline and the admonitions given to us by our leaders. So let's go ahead and have a look at a few particular topics. Now, this General Conference affords us, this Book of Mormon Evidence Conference affords us the opportunity to do some different things we've never done before. For example, usually when we do a Book of Mormon Evidence Conference, there's an hour-long presentation on usually one topic, and at this point, I want to do a little bit more topics. I want to give more information on the topics that mattered in the last 6 months and going forward into the future. And what we're going to do today is we're going to record several smaller chunks of video so that you can see it at home and understand the topics more in depth in a shorter, kind of a squeezed fashion. Right? So we're not going to do an hour-long presentation on every little topic. We're going to do some smaller topics with some condensed video. Okay? So every video is going to be about 20 minutes. At least that's anticipated. The recording time may go as long as about 40 minutes, but we'll have to see. For our conversations might get really wild. We'll have to find out. All right, so today's presentation is the first in the series, and all these presentations are built upon older presentations that we've did over the last 6 months and the last 1 year. Okay, so you're going to want to know what those presentations are. If you haven't seen the presentations from September 2020 as well as April 2020, you're going to want to look at those so that you have a basis of fact to build upon for these, because these ones here are advanced stuff. Okay, this is going to blow your mind as to what the possibilities are with this information. All 3 presentations are new information that's never been shared outside the newsletter group, the monthly newsletter group for the Last Days Timeline. So let's have a look at some stuff that we've never looked at before, except in the books and in the newsletters. Okay? All right, so today's presentation is titled, "When are the 2 half-hour of silences in heaven?" Did you catch that? There are 2 half-hour of silences in heaven, not just one. All right, it's half-hour silence number 1 versus half-hour silence number 2. All right, so let's have a look at those. Now, if you've never seen me before, I hope you would have gone back and watched the presentations. I believe they are online at the Book of Mormon Evidence Conference, but they're also online at the website lastdaystimeline.com. Those presentations are going to be important to build upon these ones, or the vice versa, rather. These ones are going to build upon those ones. Okay. So what is the project we're working on? This is the official book launch of The Last Days Timeline, Volume 1. It happened 4 years ago. And now we have so much data piled up on what the timeline is that it's just amazing. All right. It is a book. The project is a book. And now it's a book series. Okay? Last Days Timeline, Volume 1 went over all the material that we've gone in other videos, and a little bit of this one too. What is the big picture that we want to focus on? What happens? When does it happen in the timeline? And where on the planet does it happen? That's fair, right? We want to know that material. That's where the scriptures are. So now we're talking about 2 half-hour of silences in heaven. So what is the first half-hour of silence in heaven? Notice some of these key features of the first half hour of silence. It's found in John's Revelation, chapter 8, verse 1. It says about the space of half an hour. So it's kind of like a roundabout time period. It didn't say it's the exact space of half hour. The silence is in heaven, not earth. That's key differentiation. Also, the timing could be a simple half hour on earth, or it could be according to the Lord's time as 1,000 years is 1 day. To God, therefore, about 20.8 years on earth. That could be the about. So we're talking a pretty good sizable chunk. That's 2 decades here on earth, right? That's a long time. All right, so let's look at more in depth on this, okay? Revelation 8:1 says this, quote, "And when he had opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour." End quote. This half hour of silence is directly related to the opening of the 7th seal on the earth, which only Jesus can open. Remember, you've read about the seals in Revelation, right? This is the last one, okay? What else is directly before the half hour of silence? What else is sitting in there? This is important to know. Now, this is selections from Revelation 7, the chapter right before 8, right? So let's look at what types of material is sitting in there, okay? Now remember, this is a video presentation. I'm trying to shrink it down in size. If you would like to open up your scriptures right now and look along and read along with me, please do so, okay? I've already looked at them, so I know what's in there, but I want you to look at them. I want you to see it. That's important, right? Okay. So the angels that deliver the 7th trumpets in chapter 8 are told not to hurt the earth and sea until the 144,000 are sealed, which means it hasn't happened yet, which happens at the New Jerusalem temple in the new nation of Zion, as shown in Revelation 14:1, which relates to this. "And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on Mount Zion, or Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads." End quote. "The righteous dead," and this is actually in chapter 7 as well, "the righteous dead slain by the 4th beast kingdom are shown in white robes." Catch that? That's very important to know. See, because they can't be slain by some other kingdom and still be sitting in that place, right? So therefore they're shown, the dead are slain, the righteous are slain in some degree, in some manner. They're shown in white robes, and they're being slain by the 4th beast kingdom. Therefore, it can't be after or before. It's got to be during the 4th beast kingdom. Now, this is important to know. What time frame are we in? We're in the 3rd beast kingdom, and I'm going to cover that in a few more other slides, and we've covered it in a presentation before too. 3rd beast kingdom. That was covered way back in January 2017 when we first recorded our first Last Days Timeline video. Okay. Now, we've looked at what happens before the opening of the 7th seal, as well as the half hour of silence in heaven. Okay. Let's see what happens after the first half hour of silence in heaven. So we got like a dichotomy. We can see before and after. Okay. The 7 angels are getting ready to deliver the 7 trumpets, God's wrath, to the earth. So they're getting ready. That happens early in chapter 7. Or excuse me, chapter 8. Excuse me. A golden censer filled with fire from the altar of God is hurled at the earth. And immediately we see the first 4 trumpets that are related to that hurling of matter to the earth. Okay? Over the next 2 chapters, we see all of the 7 trumpets and vials of God's wrath being given. Okay, in trumpets in this section of Revelation. Remember, Revelation is divided into 3 parts. First about the churches, second about the vials, third about trumpets. The trumpets and vials do match up fairly well. You have to read chapters 20 through 24 in the Last Days Timeline Volume 1 to see that. And they look pretty darn similar. Okay. And look at this. The Battle of Armageddon itself is included toward the end of these trumpets and vials. So we are before the Battle of Armageddon. That's when this first half hour of silence happens, before this stuff goes on. So we got the format. That's the conclusions about the first half hour of silence in heaven. It takes place after the 4th beast kingdom of the Gentiles is on the earth, because it had killed many people already. We saw the dead are in white, killed for the testimony of Jesus. Yep. The new nation of Zion is built on the American continent, and the 144,000 of Israel have already been ordained. And the opening of the 7th seal takes place, then the half hour of silence in heaven. Okay. This is most common knowledge. If you've read Revelation, you've seen this. Okay, this is not uncommon knowledge. I'm just trying to give you a basis of fact before we look at the second half hour of silence in heaven. Okay. conclusions about this first half hour of silence, okay? It takes place before the throwing of the censer filled with fire with 4 trumpets, and the full 7 trumpets and vials of the wrath of God are given. Okay, so that takes place before that. Remember the 7th angel that says, time no longer, right? At the end of this whole sequence, he also gives John the Beloved Revelator his last day's mission by eating the little book. Remember, he gives him the little book, he eats it, he feels sweet in the mouth and bitter in the belly, right? That's that sequence. That angel takes place at the end of this whole sequence of 7 vials and trumpets. Okay. You'll need to know that because that is in the second half hour silence as well, but in a different position, and you'll see it. All right. Always remember the third beast kingdom. We live during the third beast kingdom of the Gentiles. That is the modern day European Union. Please, if you've never heard this material before, go back. Please watch the precursor presentations. Do not watch these first ones, or these ones today, because these ones are special. They build on the last ones, okay? So please do that. If you can't get them on Book of Mormon Evidence Conference for some reason, go to lastdaystimeline.com. Right on the homepage is a segment of videos. The oldest ones are at the bottom. The newest ones are at the top, okay? Easy to do. Also, you can learn more about the 144,000 helpers of God in the Last Days Timeline Volume 2, The Prophecy of the Tame and Wild Olive Trees. This is a deep dive into Jacob chapter 5 in the Book of Mormon and how it relates to everything else around it. And that topic comes up in that book very well. Okay. On to the second half hour of silence in heaven. All right, here we go. Let's look at the second one we see. And let's see if they match up. That's the key. Okay. This one is in Doctrine and Covenants 88, 95 through 99. Okay? Quote, and there shall be silence in heaven for the space of half an hour. Notice it did not say the about. And immediately after shall the curtain of heaven be unfolded as a scroll is unfolded and is rolled up, and the face of the Lord shall be unveiled. And the saints that are upon the earth who are alive shall be quickened and caught up to meet him. End quote. Whoa. Whoa, that sounds like the second coming. The actual second coming of Jesus Christ. Let's look. Continuing the second half hour silence. D&C 88, 95 through 99. So it's going on a little farther. It's a little bit farther into after the post half hour silence. 97 says, quote, and they who have slept in their graves shall come forth, for their graves shall be opened. That's a resurrection. And they also shall be caught up to meet him in the midst of the pillar of heaven. This is the full second coming of Jesus Christ. They are Christ, the firstfruits, they who shall descend with him first, and they who are on the earth and in their graves, who are first caught up to meet him. This is the morning of the first resurrection. And all this by the voice of the sounding of the trump of the angel of God. 99. And after this, another angel shall sound, which is the second trump. And then cometh the redemption of those who are Christ at his coming, who have received their part in that prison, which is prepared for them, that they might receive the gospel and be judged according to men in the flesh. End quote. So sometimes after this, a second trump goes off, and these are the people who are redeemed in the temples of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. When they accept the gospel in temples, accept their vicarious baptisms, and then come forth. Okay? This sounds like it's in the middle of the millennium or sometime in there. Okay? Or possibly at the beginning of the millennium, but that's a debate for another day. Let's just focus on sequencing. Okay? Analysis of the second half hour of silence. A. This second half hour of silence happens just preceding the actual second coming of Jesus Christ, to melt the earth with the power of his unfiltered and unrestricted glory. Okay? B. The first resurrection happens when Jesus comes in his glory. The living saints join him in the pillar behind him when he comes. C. And to farther this point, the next trumpet is the resurrection of the newly faithful dead who accepted Jesus in spirit prison through the temple work of the church. And D. Also realize that what you're seeing is a second set of trumpets being blared, okay, being sounded. They have nothing to do with the first set of trumpets as recorded in John's book of Revelation. Because these second sets of trumpets take place after the Battle of Armageddon and immediately before the Savior Jesus Christ comes at his second coming to burn the earth. Did you catch that? There are two sets of trumpets. Now, I'm going to talk about this later, but this is important to know. This material has always been in the Last Days Timeline Volume 1. There are two sets of trumpets. And we talked about this in a tool called the Seals, Trumpets, and Vials of the Book of Revelation. And you can get that on the website, lastdaystimeline.com. And that tool is available for everybody to download. It's right there right now. And it's been there for 4 years. Or, well, 3.5. So, there you go. Conclusions. The second half-hour silence shows that the timeline placement should be immediately before Jesus descends with the pillar of fire behind him that is filled with the living saints that were of the first resurrection in the twinkling of an eye. His second coming will burn the earth with his glory. That is a far distance in time from the first half-hour silence of heaven that is before God's biggest judgments during the 3.5-year period of the Battle of Armageddon. It's before that. When the Antichrist is fighting the Jews in Israel and has gathered a very large army against them. It takes place before even that. Okay, by a good distance. The first half hour of silence happens after the 144,000 are ordained to go preach, yet before the 7 trumpets of vials, including the Battle of Armageddon, are there. The second half hour of silence happens immediately before the full second coming of Jesus Christ in his glory. They are not the same half hour in silence. Catch that? They can't be because of the placements of the events around them. There are 2 half-hour silences. Do not try and match them up as other prophecy prognosticators have done. Don't do it. They are 2 different types, and this proves it right here. They are separate. The big picture. What you've just read is only just about a chapter and a half of the Last Days Timeline Volume 1. And the picture is this huge picture here. The picture is quite large. It has lots of details. And as we zoom in on some parts of it, you can see how they're happening. We're going to zoom in the next presentation on the parts right now. And you're going to see some amazing things line up. But the picture is much bigger. Now, this is the first time ever we have a deep dive into Jacob chapter 5. As recorded in the Last Days Timeline Volume 2, the prophecy of the tame and wild olive trees. What happens when a fictional story becomes real? Good question. Inside this book, you'll discover how to know the difference between the unbelieving Gentiles and the believing Gentiles, what the grand stumbling block of the Gentiles is in real life, the history of the lost 10 tribes of Israel while they were lost, the precise moment of the coming forth of the Jews and the Gentiles to be grafted into the mother tree, and the realization that other prophets also read Zenos' prophecy. It's not just in the Book of Mormon. It's other places too, and much more. That's recorded in this book. And you can pick this up at lastdaystimeline.com/volume 2. Or you can see it right on the homepage. Alright, so the Last Days Timeline Volume 1 and New Volume 2 are now in a bundle. You've heard Volume 1, you've heard about Volume 1 before, most likely. But Volume 2, you might not have heard of it. So it's out there now. So they come as a bundle on the lastdaystimeline.com. Also, there's a Last Days Timeline monthly newsletter. This is released in mailed or emailed once a month, usually towards the end of the month, but it depends. And the newsletter is a place where I can bring all of the material of prophecy that's relevant right now into your view in a timely manner, real time. Okay? What happens is this is the relationships of history to scriptural prophecy. That's what it contains. The most up-to-date research of the prophecies, the market's relevant news, and overcome market dips for your family. How nice. That would be good. And we're going to talk about that then in the third presentation, actually. New Last Days Timeline book and chapter updates before they are released. Go straight through the newsletter. And of course, what everybody's asking for, the timely warnings of protection for you and your family against what's to come. All from an LDS perspective of following the prophet. How important is that? And we're going to talk about a few of those things right now in the next couple presentations coming up. Number 3 is The President Makers. This is the next book you should read after reading Last Days Timeline Volume 1. Why is that? Because Volume 1 speaks about Ezra Ziegel and the U.S. presidents. This book shows it from, Don Fotheringham wrote it, and it talks about the presidents and relating to what actually happened in history that shows that the Eagleheads did take over. Although it has nothing to do with the Eagleheads, it's more of a historical work rather than a scriptural work. So, just as long as you know. And the Ruin and Restoration series. Now this is fun. The Last Days Timeline fiction series, and you can get these as a bundle as well. What these are is that some people, they need fun, right? They need fiction, they need excitement, they need comedy, they need to feel how the timeline works through history, okay? And this fictional book series gives them that. That's the point. If you like reading fiction, and you like romance, and you like comedy, and you like government affairs, things like that, you'll love this book series. And book 3 is coming out in just next couple of weeks. It's already been done. It's completed. We're reading it right now. It'll be out to the test readers soon. So book 3 is coming out. It's not going to be 2 book series. It's going to be 3, and it's going to be more than that too. So 3 is coming now. All right, there you have it. So the next presentation is just for you. I have a special announcement coming right up right here. Thank you. This Donald J. Trump presentation is just a small piece of the overall history or future history in the book, The Last Days Timeline. It matches Isaiah to John to Daniel to Ezekiel through Ezra Eagle all the way through from this week all the way through to the end of when Christ comes at the beginning of the millennium. You can go to lastdaystimeline.com and download all the material you saw in the presentation, including the big timeline map. Also, you have access to the Apocrypha itself with links directly to it. You also have access to the book itself and free chapters in the book. If you're interested in purchasing the book directly, there's a discount code right now called 5Presentation. It's the number 5 presentation. You can put that right in the cart and it'll work for $5 off the copy of the book. There's 3 editions of the book. The printed edition, which is mail free, free shipping. There's the ebook and there's the audiobook. And the 5 presentation will work for all of those. And you can buy them today at lastdaystimeline.com.